Hello, everyone. Let's just adjust that a little bit. There we go. Sorry. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. Very happy to be here in Bangalore again. Let's take a moment to settle into our space. Whatever worldly activities we've been up to today, whatever running around our weekend has offered us, let's put that all aside and be fully present together. Let yourself create a sacred space for you to study and practice the Dharma, regardless of the physical space you're in. And with that, let's set a strong motivation that today I am studying this text, this commentary by Gyalten on a text by a teacher, and how to practice the teachings of the Buddha. I'm studying this so I can put it into practice, which will allow me to lead a more meaningful life, which will allow me to find joy, contentment, and peace in this life for the purpose of being of service to others. Whatever benefit I experience in this life is not my goal or not my primary goal. My primary goal is to be of service, to help other sentient beings be free from suffering. And I realize that to do that, the best way I can do that is by becoming a Buddha myself, by perfecting my mind, by completing the two collections of wisdom and compassion. And in so doing, that is how I can be of maximum benefit to others. So with that motivation, the motivation that looks towards perfect, complete Buddhahood for the purpose of benefiting others, I approach this text and this class this evening. With that motivation firmly in our minds, we will offer some preliminary prayers. I don't think we'll be sharing the prayer book today. Sorry, there's no one online to share it. So if you have a copy, it's available for download. The PDF is available for free. So if you have a copy, you can follow along. It'll be the same prayers we do every week. I'll tell the page numbers as we go if you do have a copy. We'll start by offering refuge. We'll do this 3 times in Tibetan, once in English. And so we're starting on page 34 in the Gold Prayer Book, which is the Essential Prayer Book, Volume 1. Sangye chiran soki chonam la jansho paru dagni kyapsu chi dagi linsogi pesoram gi drola pencher sangye drupar sho sangye chiran soki chonam la jansho paru dagni kyapsu chi dagi linsogi pesoram gi Jola Pinche Sange Drupar Sho Sange Chiran Soki Chonam La Chanchu Paru Dagni Kapsu Chi Dagi Jinsogi Pesonam Gi Jola Pinche Sange Drupar Sho. And go for refuge in time enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and the other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Reverently I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain unto the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. We'll offer mandala offering, once in Tibetan and then once in English. So with the mandala offering, you visualize the entire universe and you visualize it as a purified Buddha field, free from all faults, all stains, and you offer that purified land to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas for the benefit of all sentient beings. And so before teaching, it's traditional to make a mandala offering once to the teacher to request whatever the teachings are, and then once to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to request their blessings. So you can visualize this in our mind as we make this offering. Sa-shi-pi-ki Ju-ik-shi-me-to Tram-ri-ra-mi-shi Ni-de-gen-pa-ni Sange-shing-du Mi-te-wa-ni Shoku-naman-da-shi-na Ship-o-ri-sho. This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and I offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. We'll continue with offering praise to Shakyamuni Buddha, which is on page 73 of this prayer book. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings. To you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings. To you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Chakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings. To you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, O supreme amongst humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides and then said, I am supreme in this world. To you, who are wise, then, I prostrate. With pure bodies, forms supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the three worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the three worlds are not, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you, the one gone to dustness, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all three ever devout homage, to all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms, atoms, and all aspects. With supreme faith, I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions. Perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, sea, condition things as such. Through these merits, may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the ways of aging, sickness, and death. And we'll continue with the Heart Sutra. I prostrate to the Arya triple gem. Thus did I hear one time. The Bhagawan was dwelling on mass of Vulture's mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagawan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya of Lokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, and behold those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of a lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom shall look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomena. There is no I element, and so on up to and including no mind element, and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on up to and including no aging and death, no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the endpoint of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to the unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance upon the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as the truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared, Tayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Swaha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of lineage, it is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated, and even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that which had been spoken by the Bhagavan. We will end with prayer to the lion-faced Dakini, which is a prayer to help prevent any obstacles. I prostrate to the gathering of Dakinis and the three chakras who abide in the holy yoga of using space by your powers of clairvoyance and magical emanation. Look after practitioners like a mother her child. Akasamarata Shadara Samarayape. Akasamarata Shadara Samarayape. Akasamarata Shadara Samarayape. Akasamarata Shadara Samarayape. Tayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Swaha. By the teachings of the three supreme jewels possessing the power of truth, may inner and outer hindrances be transformed, may they be dispelled, may they be pacified. Shintam Kuriya Swaha. May all negative forces opposed to Dharma be completely pacified. May the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. May we be separated from problems and harmful conditions to Dharma. May all enjoyments be in accord with the Dharma. And may there be auspiciousness and perfect happiness here right now. Excellent. Thank you. So it is wonderful to be here again today. 2 weeks in a row. That's nice to be in the center 2 weeks in a row. As we begin the study today, let's remind ourselves what attitudes we need to cultivate to be appropriate students to study the Dharma. And as we learned last week, and as we repeat over and over again on our classes here, we want to avoid the 3 faults of a vessel, right? So we want to avoid being like a pot or a water vessel that is upside down, which is to say we want to be open-minded and receptive when we come to a teaching. When we attend to any teaching, whether it be in person or we're reading a text on our own, we want to be open-minded. We want to avoid being like a vessel that is stained on the inside. So we don't want to have any preconceptions or any biases or any prejudices leading into our study of that text and our attending to that teaching. And then we want to avoid the fault of being like a vessel that has a crack or a hole in it. So we want to make sure that we are attentive and that we are mindful and that we don't allow our minds to wander and be forgetful. So we want to retain whatever it is that we study. And the reason we want to retain it, obviously, is because the point of study is to transform our mind so we can transform our practice. Right? The point of study isn't just to learn new information. If we just wanted to learn new information, we could go to a college course and that would be fine. Right? The point of study is to literally transform the way we exist in the world. That is the reason the Buddha taught, and that is the reason we receive these teachings and try to put them into practice. So we need to learn how to constantly be studying and then integrating what we learn. And if we forget it, we're not able to integrate. So the practice of study or of attending a teaching is only the first step. Then we have to contemplate whatever it is that we have studied. We have to develop some conviction in it. And then we have to actually meditate on it and make it inseparable from our mind so that when we go about our day, we can then put it into practice. And the more we practice it, the less effort it takes to put into practice. It becomes more second nature. And that is a cycle that never ends, right? The idea of study, contemplation, and then meditation. And that is how we transform an intellectual understanding of the teachings of the Buddha into an experiential understanding. And that's how we actually transform our minds, right? And so this text, especially, is one that goes about showing us all of the different aspects of the path to Buddhahood that we need to practice in order to become Buddhas. So it's step by step showing us how to propel ourselves towards Buddhahood. That's the beauty of a text like this. The sequence of it is important. And what Atisha has done, and then Tsongkhapa in his commentary, has taken the sequence of these different topics the Buddha taught and put them in such a way that they work together, right? They build on each other and they inspire us to continue studying. So as we study one topic, it leads into the next topic, right? And that it inspires us and it motivates us and it compels us to continue studying and practice. Before we go any further, I should let people know that it is Sakadawa Duchen tomorrow. It's a holiday. So there are 4 major holidays in Tibetan religious calendar. The first one is the Day of Miracles. And that is the 15th day of the first Tibetan month. And that is celebrating the Shakyamuni Buddha for 2 weeks, traveled around India, putting on these performances where at first it was starting as a series of debates against these Tirthakas who challenged him. And King Prasenajit and other kings in the area hosted these kind of tournaments, and the Buddha would display these miracles to help win people's confidence. And so the first holiday we celebrate is on the 15th of the first month. This is the second holiday we celebrate is today. It is it'll be tomorrow, the 15th of the 4th Tibetan month, or lunar month. And that is the anniversary of the Buddha's birth, as well as his enlightenment, as well as his displaying and passing away. So all 3 of those things happen on the 15th of the 4th lunar month. So that's tomorrow. And so the whole month is called Sakadawa. Dawa means moon or month. Saka is the name of the constellation that, according to Vedic astrology, That's the name of the constellation. That's the primary celestial body at this time of the lunar phase, or whatever you want to call it. So during Sakadawa, the whole month, in the monastery, for instance, most of the monks, like all the monks I live with that eat meat, don't eat meat for the whole month of Sakadawa like this, And whatever you can do, the whole month is considered a holy month. So any practices you can do are magnified. But the strongest is on the 15th, which will be tomorrow. The two other holidays in the Tibetan calendar are Wheel Turning Day. So it's the anniversary of the first sermon the Buddha taught. That is on the 4th of the 6th lunar month. And then there is Labap Duchen, which is when the Buddha descended from one of the heaven realms, where he had been teaching his mother and the other gods for 6 months. And that is on the 22nd of the 9th lunar month. So those are all really important days for us to practice. According to the tradition, all of our merit is multiplied on those days, and including the whole month surrounding those days, especially for Sakadawa, it's so powerful. So it's really wonderful to be able to attend teachings during the month of Sakadawa. And for those of us that can practice tomorrow, whatever practices you can do tomorrow, it's very wonderful to do. Even if you're not able to attend to the center or come online, take some time tomorrow to be very dedicated to your practice. Even if it's just a meditation practice, if it's study, whatever it may be, if it's going to work in the community, going to make offerings at a local nonprofit, anything you can do to accumulate virtue tomorrow, it's a very powerful day to do it. So I highly encourage that. And so even though we're a day early tonight, it's good to be with you today. So keep that in mind, that our practice today isn't just about improving our minds and improving our understanding. It's a practice of accumulating merit, right? The idea that wisdom and merit are separate is not the way it is. So by being here together, we are studying. Hopefully, we're improving our intellect and our understanding, which will then feed into our meditation practice. But at the same time, we're accumulating merit. And that is a wonderful thing, right? We can rejoice in that. So that's a good thing to keep in mind as we begin our session today. So as we study this text, where have we gotten to so far? So the text started by proclaiming the greatness of the text for the purpose of, the greatness of the teacher. So talking about a teacher's good qualities. And that gives us confidence that the text that we're studying, which is a commentary on a teacher's text, has a valid basis, right? And then after the greatness of the teacher, it talks about the greatness of the text itself. And this goes into the greatness of all the teachings of the Buddha. So there are two excellent qualities, especially, that all the teachings of the Buddha have that we should always keep in mind. What are those two excellent qualities? Anyone, online or in person?
No contradictions.
No contradictions, that's the first one. And
the personal teachings to your own self.
Exactly. So all the teachings of the
Personal
Buddha are non-contradictory, right? And this is important to remember. The words may be contradictory, but all the teachings of the Buddha are designed to liberate all sentient beings, to lead all sentient beings to Buddhahood. And therefore, the teachings themselves are not contradictory. The words may be, because the words were addressing the immediate needs of different disciples that were in front of the Buddha at the time. So we have to rely upon authentic teachers, both living teachers and authentic teachers in our lineage, to help us determine which teachings are literal and which ones are interpretive, right? But with that in mind, all the teachings of the Buddha are valid, and there is no contradiction among them. That's the first excellent quality. And then the second excellent quality is that we need to understand that every single word the Buddha spoke was a direct personal teaching to us. And that goes as well for all of our lineage gurus. That goes for this teaching of the middle-length Lamrim. When we read this text, that this is a direct teaching from our teacher directly to us. So we should take it as personal advice. And if we do that, if we don't just accept this as, when was this composed? Does anyone remember? This is Tsongkhapa's of the 5 texts on emptiness we're encouraged to study. This is the 4th one. Do you remember when it was composed? If I give you a hint, the first one was composed in 1502. That was the Lamrim, the Great Lamrim was in 1502. Excuse me, 1402.
20 years later.
1402. And then the 1407, 1408. And this is the 4th one. When was this?
1415.
1415, exactly. So 1415. And then the last text, Gompa Rapso, was in 1418. So if we just look at this as a historical text that was composed 600 years ago, that's not very useful to us. I mean, it'll improve our minds. There's definitely benefit, even if we take it in that way. But instead, if we look at this as being the words from our teacher directly spoken to us, you get so much more benefit, right? The benefit is magnified and exacerbated when you realize that this is Tsongkhapa speaking directly to you and your guru speaking directly to you. So that's important, right? That's the kind of intimacy we need to have with all of the texts that we study. And then after studying the greatness of the text itself, the greatness of the teachings of the Buddha, the section next was how to study and then how to explain. So the proper way to study, which is where we got the example of avoiding the three faults of a vessel, and then how to properly explain a text. So what it means to be someone who is discussing a text with others. And then from there, we're at the section of how to rely on a spiritual friend, right? So that's where we are right now. We're in how to rely on a spiritual friend or guru devotion. Maybe before, yeah, that's the section we're on right now. I was going to do a little quiz, but we can save that. Actually, no, we'll do a quiz. So in the section on guru devotion, right? The reason we study guru devotion is before we even enter the path, right? The path of practice, it starts by, guru devotion is before that. It's considered the heart of the path or the root of the path, because properly relying on a teacher is how we actually can absorb the teachings in a meaningful way. So if we don't have a teacher that we actually have accepted as a guru, we can still learn. It'll still benefit our minds. And there are many great teachers, such as His Holiness Dalai Lama, Khyentse Lodrödzön Rinpoche, and so forth, who have many teachings available to us in the public domain, right? So we have access to great teachings. But once we accept someone as a guru, then that is what really pushes us onto the path in a meaningful way. And that is what magnifies our practice. So the teacher, we say that our guru is kinder to us than Shakyamuni Buddha. Yes, Shakyamuni Buddha is the first one in this world system who taught the Dharma, right? But he's not teaching it to us directly. Our guru is. So being in the presence of a guru, our guru is kinder to us than Shakyamuni Buddha. He's kinder to us, or she is kinder to us than all of the Buddhas, because our guru is here with us now, right? Which is incredibly kind. So we need to realize that relying on a guru is what it is like lighting a fire under our practice, right? It's really important. Now, just because someone teaches us the Dharma doesn't mean we have to accept them as a guru, right? And so we can talk more about that. This text, the middle length Lamrim, doesn't go into too much detail about that. The great Lamrim has more detail on it. And then Tsongkhapa's commentary on the 50 verses of how to rely on a guru also has more detail on it. That is specifically talking about a tantric guru, but the advice still applies to a non-tantric guru. But here, where we start with, and what we ended on last time was, we're talking about the qualities of a teacher that we should seek out when we're trying to find someone who we should take as a teacher, right? When we're seeking out a guru. Just because someone is speaking the Dharma doesn't mean we should accept them as a guru. We should identify what are the good qualities that would make someone an appropriate teacher for us. And so there are three groupings. There is the ideal situation, right? The best situation, then the middling situation, and then the smallest situation. So the largest situation it uses a verse from the ornament for the Mahayana Sutras, which is by Maitreya, to show the 10 qualities we should expect in a guru, ideally. What are those 10 qualities?
A spiritual teacher with discipline, who is
First,
calm.
the discipline, right?
Yeah.
Discipline, calm.
Calm,
and then
complete peace.
Completely pacified, have complete peace.
And as effortless, is able to teach effortlessly. So, mudita. His knowledge of the scriptures is very rich, and he has thoroughly realized suchness or ultimate reality, is eloquent, loving, and never disheartened.
And also has more qualities than us.
Those
are the 10, right? And so those 10, we can reorder them a little bit, as Tsongkhapa does, to notice that of the 10, the first six of them pertain to the teacher's own realizations, and then 4 pertain to the teacher's ability to communicate with others, right? So the first 6 are discipline. So the teacher should be living in morality, right? Whether that be their vows, with the Pradimoksha vows, Bodhisattva vows, Tantric vows, and having good morality in general, right? Regardless of the vows themselves. But so the outer practice of the teacher should be one of the Pratimoksha vows, then they should be motivated by the Bodhisattva vows, and ideally by the Tantric vows as well. So our teacher should be living in morality, right? And that is what we mean by being disciplined. And then a teacher should be calm and be completely pacified. These two go together. Here in this context, calm means they should have developed some level of concentration, some level of calm abiding concentration, right? And completely pacified means they should have achieved some level of vipassana or special insight, which is itself built on calm abiding. So that's a type of wisdom, both wisdom regarding emptiness, but also wisdom regarding conventional objects as well. So those are the first three. Next, they should be rich in scripture. So they should be well learned. They should understand and have access to internal access to multiple scriptures. There's not just one text that they're a specialist in, but they should have access to an understanding of the full breadth of everything the Buddha taught. And then they should have realized suchness or realized emptiness. So to some extent, this is repeating the idea of being having complete peace, right? Complete peace being realization of vipassana, a special insight into emptiness, as well as a conventional wisdom. Here, this is emphasizing the importance of having an understanding of wisdom, right? And then the last one, which is a quality for the teacher themselves, is that they should have more qualities than their students. They should have more good qualities than their students in general. And then the four aspects of a teacher that we should seek out, that is the teacher, how they relate to others. The first one is they should be eloquent. So they should be able to teach and explain the Dharma in a way that is appropriate for the students that are in front of them. They should also be loving, right? They should be approaching their students with care and concern and wish their students to succeed in their Dharma practice. They should put effort into their teaching and into their practice, and they should never be disheartened. So they should never be tired of teaching. They should never want to give up teaching. They should never feel like the teaching is a burden, right? They should always be joyful in offering teaching. So those are the 10 ideal qualities we should seek out in a teacher. Now, however, we know that quite often we won't be able to get all 10 of those. So then the middling is there are 5 qualities that are suggested. And those 5 qualities are, they should be well-versed in the 3 higher trainings, right? So the higher training of wisdom, the higher training of concentration, and the higher training of morality. And the distinction between a higher training and a training is simply that the higher training, quote unquote, means it is combined with a mind of refuge, right? So a mind of refuge combined with the training of wisdom, concentration, and morality. So those are the first 3 qualities. And really, that means they should be well-versed in all the teachings of the Buddha, because all the teachings of the Buddha fit into those 3 higher trainings, right? So they should be well-versed in the 3 higher trainings. They should also have a realization of emptiness, and they should have a loving heart. So those are the 5 ideal qualities of the middling teacher, not the middling teacher, but the 5 middling qualities. And then Tsongkhapa says, in this day, it is very difficult to even find people who meet those qualifications. So at the very least, you should seek out a teacher who has more good qualities than they have bad qualities, and also has more good qualities than you do as a student, or has a better understanding of the Dharma than you do as a student, right? So they have more qualities than you. And so that is where we ended, right, last week, is discussing those different types of qualities that we should expect a teacher to have as we seek out a teacher. So next, the next topic we're going to discuss, after having discussed what is an appropriate teacher, will be an appropriate student, right? So what does it mean to be an appropriate student? And then how does a student rely upon a teacher in an appropriate way? So those are the 3 aspects of knowing how to properly rely on a spiritual guide. Is first, what is an appropriate spiritual guide? What is an appropriate student? And then how does the student actually rely on a teacher in a meaningful way? In this context, what does that mean? So that's what we're going to start with today. And then after that, then we actually still haven't started the path yet. The path of practice starts with, and Atisha's text starts with perfect human rebirth. That's the first topic we meditate on. We still haven't gotten there yet. We'll start with the preliminary practices. So we'll finish discussing how to rely on a teacher, and then the preliminary practices that lead into a meditation session on perfect human rebirth and so on. So that's what we're going to get into today. As I'm sure you all know, because I'm sure you studied this text over the week, that you read ahead, that you're prepared for class today. So we're all on the same page. Yeah, we discussed the 4 reliances. Do you remember them? Yeah, that.
Rely on the.
Yeah. So what are the 4 reliances? Thank you. What are the 4 reliances? We did talk about them.
Relying on the meaning rather than the words.
Yep. Meaning instead of the word.
Then
But that's the second one.
Definitive.
That's the second one. So what's the first one?
Relying on the words of the Buddha.
Relying on the word instead of the teacher. The word is more, the teachings themselves are more important than the teacher. Then the meaning is more important than the words. And then
definitive meaning more important.
Oh, the definitive meaning is more important than the interpretive meaning. And then
experiential wisdom is more important than intellectual.
Exactly, right? So these are the 4 reliances, they're called. They're important to remember. They don't apply to every single text as we study, but you have to, it's important for us to recognize when we're studying with a teacher, what is the most important thing, right? The most important thing is the Dharma itself as it's being communicated. So if we are just seeking out a teacher because they're really famous, then that is not the right reason to seek out a teacher. Now, it could be they're really famous because they're great at teaching. And in that case, that's wonderful. But the most important thing is the teaching itself, right? And then when we're studying the words of the Buddha, we have to see that sometimes, a lot of not every, but almost every text we study is going to have been originally given to a group of monks. Almost every single text. Not everyone, but almost everyone. So that is the context for a lot of these texts. And so we need to recognize that context and say, well, if I rely only on these words, that may not be entirely appropriate for my situation. I mean, it would be for me, but maybe not for the rest of you, right? And so you have to give the text an understanding that who is the audience for this text and how does that apply to me, right? So just relying on the words alone isn't going to be appropriate because you have to understand the meaning of the words and what was the intent of the words. Why did the Buddha or any of the Indian commentators or the Tibetan commentators teach these words, right? What was the point of this teaching? And then when we talk about definitive and interpretive, ultimately what that means is the definitive meaning is any meaning that is related to emptiness, and the interpretive meaning is the meaning not related to emptiness. But on top of that, it also means the literal meaning and the non-literal meaning. So for example, the Buddha has a sutra where someone comes to him who had just killed his parents. And the Buddha said, according to the Dharma, you should kill your mother and kill your father, right? That's the words of the actual sutra. But what the Buddha meant is you have to destroy all of the afflictive emotions and you have to destroy all of the seeds and the imprints of the afflictive emotions. So the interpretive meaning is you should kill your father and kill your mother, which obviously we don't rely on. But the actual meaning of that is you should destroy all of the afflictive emotions because that's how you will find liberation, right? And so in that text, we have to recognize that the text itself is not meant to be taken literally. So that is what we mean by the interpretive meaning in that context. And then lastly, we have to have a realization of the meaning, right? A profound experiential realization that is more than just intellectual. So we are on, if you have the PDF, it's on page 21. We are on the section explaining the characteristics of the one who relies, which is the student. Now, I'll remind you that the text itself, a lot of the outline was added later by Trija Rinpoche, the tutor for His Holiness Dalai Lama. The larger outline is in the source text by Tsongkhapa. But then some of the smaller ones, what we call yigshun, the small letters, a lot of that was added by Trija Rinpoche to help create structure. Or he didn't rearrange the text, but he just added these outlines so we can follow along where everything is. So I won't be reading all of the outlines out loud, but I will be reading the major outlines and I'll go through the text. So where we are right now is explaining the characteristics of the one who relies, which is the student. And this itself has 4 points. So from the 400 stanzas, it says, impartial, intelligent, full of endeavor, Thus is explained a vessel for the teachings. Otherwise, qualities of the teacher have no effect. There's no change in the listener. As it says in the commentaries, someone endowed with the three characteristics is a suitable vessel for listening. If all three are complete, the positive qualities of the one expounding the Dharma appear as positive qualities and do not appear as faults. Not only that, the positive qualities of the listeners also appear as positive qualities to that person and do not appear as faults. If the characteristics of a vessel are not complete, the listener, under the power of their own faults, will classify even a great, perfectly pure spiritual teacher who expounds the Dharma among those who have faults and perceive an exponent's faults as qualities. So, what is this saying? What are these three qualities that is being encouraged, right? And sometimes at the beginning of class, we talk about this as well. The first one is we should be impartial, right? Next is we should be intelligent. And finally, that we should be full of endeavor, which is to say, exert effort, right? Or diligent, enthusiastic. Now, those aren't the only qualities that we should have when we try to engage in a teaching or when we rely on a teacher, but those are the most important. There's another text by Dignaga, the Pramana Samuchaya, which is the Semakuntu, the collection of, how do you say in English? The collection of teachings on logic or on Pramana. And he says, the compendium of Pramana, right? And a student also, if they want to rely on a teacher properly, they should also abandon worldly activities, which is to say they should be working towards renunciation, right? They should try to be developing a mind that is not attached to samsara. They should also not have jealousy towards the teacher or towards their fellow students. They should have compassion, right? And they should not cling to any of the worldly desires, such as wealth or prestige or popularity and so forth. For me, I think it's important to remember these qualities. The first three from the 400 stanzas are very easy to understand. If I'm trying to learn something from you, then of course I should be impartial. I shouldn't go to a teaching and have judgment before I get there. Of course, I should be intelligent, which in this regard means that I should be curious and open to learning, right? And not lazy. And of course, I should be diligent. I should exert effort. Those all make sense in the context of trying to learn something, right? But if I'm trying to rely upon someone as a teacher and to learn from them, to then think, I also need to be striving to be free from samsara. I also need to have a mind of compassion. I also need to avoid jealousy, not just against my teacher, towards my teacher, but avoid jealousy towards other students. And I have to avoid the worldly dharmas. How do those actually help my mind of relying on a teacher? How does compassion help my ability to learn, help my ability to study, right? So whenever we study a text like this, that's the kind of thing you need to think about. You say, well, the teachers say having compassion will make me a more appropriate vessel to be a recipient of the teachings. Well, how can compassion improve my mind when I go about study? How can compassion improve my ability to be a proper student, right? And so on. So these are the things I think about, and I think they're useful to think about. We should never be, so compassion is defined as the mind that wishes for another being, or great compassion is for all sentient beings, to be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. So therefore, our teachers, if we have an actual guru, and we see them as a Buddha or as an emissary of the Buddha, then they're not an appropriate object for our compassion, right? Because the Buddhas don't experience suffering. The Buddhas are free from samsara. Therefore, they don't experience suffering. So therefore, our teachers are not actually appropriate objects for our compassion. So therefore, what is the use of having compassion to rely on a teacher properly, right? And the use is, as we said, compassion and the skillful method or skillful means aspect of practice and the wisdom aspect aren't independent, right? If you want to improve your understanding of the Dharma, you need to put it into practice. And the way you put it into practice is by allowing our compassion to guide our activities and to be our motivating factor. So you need to have that compassion, and that compassion increases your intellect, you can say, or your ability to study and learn and practice. And in the same way, just having great compassion, but never studying the text is not going to get you to Buddhahood either. Because wisdom is adding to your compassion. It makes your compassion and your other practice of the perfections, or what we call the vast path, it makes those stronger as well. So these two things, the profound teachings on emptiness and wisdom, and the vast teachings or expansive teachings, which are all of the other practices, such related to compassion, bodhicitta, and the six perfections, they're not independent, right? So if I want to be an appropriate student and I want to make the most out of my opportunity to study with gurus, I have to develop a mind of compassion. I have to develop a mind that says my happiness is not the most important. I have to develop a mind that says I'm not attached to samsaric delights, that I'm seeking to be free from samsara for myself and for others. I have to avoid being jealous of my classmates or my students or my fellow monks or nuns who are better than me, who have a better understanding than me, who have been meditating longer than me, right? Who have more good qualities than I have. Because none of those things are going to benefit my study, right? And if I don't increase my study, then where am I going on the path? That is the purpose of having a teacher, is to guide us on the path. And so having jealousy, not having compassion, having attachment to samsara, those are all obstacles to my journey on the path. And so if my life is filled with obstacles that I am not doing anything to get rid of, then the teacher can only bring me so far. So to be an appropriate vessel for a student, for a teacher, we have to try to develop these things. Doesn't mean we have to have perfected them. If we've already perfected renunciation, if we have perfect renunciation, if we have great compassion, if we already have these realizations, then, what are you doing coming to my teachings? In that regard, we've already on the path. So no, this isn't saying we have to be perfect before we can have a teacher. We have to be perfect before we can be an appropriate student. But it means we have to be working towards those things, right? We're a constant work in progress. That's what we have to realize. We're never going to be perfect, right? But we have an opportunity to practice now. So we have to do the best we can. And the more we practice, then the better we're going to study, the better we're going to learn, the better our meditation practice will do. Everything feeds into itself. So Tsongkhapa goes on to explain those qualities. In this regard, impartial means without bias. If you have a bias, it'll make you obscured, which is to say, it'll block your ability to understand the teachings. You will not perceive the positive qualities, and therefore you will fail to find the meaning of the excellent explanations. It is just as it says in the essence of the middle way. With a biased and thus anguished mind, peace can never be realized. So here it's especially saying that if you have a biased mind and you aren't impartial, that when you look upon a teacher, you aren't going to be able to avoid looking at their faults, right? And once we accept someone as a teacher, we should never observe any of their faults. Okay, even if you don't accept them as a Buddha, there are different levels of Mahayana spiritual friend we've talked about, right? If you have a Pratimoksha teacher, a Pratimoksha spiritual friend, then they are the one that give you, especially your lay vows, and they teach you ethical discipline. You do not have to accept them as a Buddha. A Mahayana spiritual friend, you also don't have to accept as a Buddha, but you have to accept them at the bare minimum as an emissary of the Buddha. And when they're giving teachings, they are representative of the Buddha. And then a tantric spiritual friend, a tantric guru, you have to accept as a Buddha. However, that is the lineage. That's what the Buddha said. And that's what our teachers very clearly say in the teachings. However, it's to your benefit to accept your guru as a Buddha, right? That is how you benefit your mind the most. So when you're able to, then that is the best way to relate to a teacher. But regardless of which of those three types of relationship you have, whether it be you see your teacher as an emissary of the Buddha or an actual Buddha themselves, you should never focus on your teacher's faults, right? Now, before you accept them as a guru, you should see if they have faults. That's before you take them as a guru, when you're still investigating. You should look at their good qualities and their faults, because you want to make sure they have more good qualities than they do faults, right? But once you've made the decision, this person is my teacher, this person is my guru, then you stop looking at their faults. Whatever faults they may display, you look at them as being skillful means, or you look at them as being obscurations in your own mind and your own experience that they are putting on and displaying for your benefit, whether you realize it or not. Because if you look at them as having faults, it's much harder to then actually receive their teachings and to be transformed by their teachings. By observing a teacher's faults, which is to say to have a biased mind regarding your teacher, you're creating a wall that's making it more difficult to study with that person and to learn something from that person. That doesn't mean don't be critical, right? Even with your teacher, you can be critical, but being critical and being skeptical is not the same as being cynical. So when your teacher says something, you ask questions. If you have doubts, you ask questions. You don't accept it on blind faith. No, there's not a single teacher who wants you to accept what they say on blind faith, right? They want you to ask questions and be doubtful. But at the end of the day, you should not be observing their faults if you've taken them as a teacher. So that's the first thing, that you don't want to be partial. So you want to be impartial. To be biased means to be attached to one's own approach and to hate others' approach. Having examined something like this in your own continuum, you should discard it. Is that by itself sufficient, though? And the answer is no. Not only do you have to be impartial, if someone does not have the intelligence to distinguish between good ways of explaining and faulty ways of explaining, and that seem the same, then he is not a suitable vessel, even though he may be impartial. Therefore, one needs to have the intelligence that understands these two. So, this is saying, when you attend a teaching, before you accept someone as a teacher, you have to see, are they teaching in a valid way, right? So before you accept someone as a teacher, when you are looking at their teaching style, you say, is what they're teaching concordant with what the Buddha taught and with what my other teachers teach, right? If the Dalai Lama says one thing and this person is saying something else, you say, well, maybe what they're saying, is that correct or not? Now sometimes, especially contemporary teachers, may be teaching something in such a way to benefit us that isn't direct. And so, anyway, I won't go on a tangent this early, but just to say, we have to have some level of intelligence to be a good student, right? Because we want to be investigating the teachings themselves. We don't want to be accepting it at face value, blindly. And are those two sufficient? So if you are impartial and you have some level of intelligence, which is actually investigating the teachings, being critical of them, trying to develop your own sense of conviction in the teachings, is that enough? And then Tsongkhapa says no. Even if one has the two of impartiality and intelligence, someone who is just like the listener to the Dharma in a lifeless picture is not a suitable vessel. Therefore, one also needs to have great endeavor, which is to say they have to make effort. So if you are just like a photograph, that you're just sitting there and you're letting the teachings wash over you, but you're not putting the effort in to receive those teachings, right? Then what's the point? It doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how much faith you have in your guru. If you're not actually doing the work to try to learn what they're teaching, to try to take what they're teaching and incorporate it into your mind, to try to make it part of your practice, then it doesn't matter, right? Your intelligence is inconsequential if you don't actually put in any work. So in addition to being impartial, in addition to being intelligent, you also have to be diligent, right? Or here it says have great endeavor. So put in effort to realize the teachings in your everyday life and in your practice. So the commentary states that the two, respect for the Dharma and for the expounder of the Dharma, as well as an attentive mind, are added, so that 5 characteristics are set forth. So the commentary on the 400, which is a self-commentary, auto-commentary, in addition to those 3, adds these 2 other qualities. One is you should have respect for the teacher and the Dharma itself, and you should have an attentive mind. So these are specifically taught as the characteristics that make someone a suitable student. They're also appropriate to think of not just as a student of a teacher, but as a student of the Dharma itself. So whenever you go about studying a Dharma text or attending a Dharma teaching, even if that person is not your guru who's giving that teaching, even if you view them simply as a professor, we could say, right? A spiritual instructor, not a spiritual friend, someone who is teaching the Dharma to you in a academic kind of way, which is an appropriate type of relationship to have if you haven't done the investigation and haven't made a decision to make them your guru. You still should cultivate these qualities with the Dharma itself and with the teaching itself. So these are important qualities to remember, right? So I often bring these up at the beginning of teaching as well. So that being so, there are 4. So then Tsongkhapa is now condensing them into 4. Because why not give 3 and then 2 and then somehow make it 4? We have to make things, to make them easier, we have to make them complicated first. So there are 4 that Tsongkhapa is saying. Great endeavor with regard to the Dharma, completely attentive mind while listening, having great respect for the Dharma and the expounder of Dharma, and holding on to that good explanation as having rejected faulty ones. So those four are added to intelligence, which is a conducive circumstance for those four. And impartiality is what eliminates the adverse circumstances. So what he's really saying is that if you really want to be an appropriate student, these are the four things you have to have, right? You have to diligence, or the willingness to exert effort in your study and your practice. You have to have an attentive mind, and you have to have respect for the Dharma and the person teaching the Dharma, and you have to have rejected faulty explanations of the Dharma. But then, in order for those to go anywhere, you have to have intelligence. Intelligence serves as a causal factor for all four of those, and impartiality also serves as a factor to eliminate obstacles to all four of those. So those four are the ones that you're really trying to cultivate, but intelligence and impartiality are helping you cultivate them. You should examine whether or not all of the attributes that would make you suitable to be guided by a guru are complete, and cultivate joy if they are. And if they are not complete, you should strive henceforth and in future lives after the causes for making them complete. So this is Tsongkhapa reminding us that we aren't perfect yet. So anytime we can acknowledge that any good qualities we have, we should rejoice in that. We should have joy in those good qualities, because that's what makes us sustain those good qualities, right? But when we notice that we may be deficient in some way or another, that's not an excuse to beat ourselves up. He's not saying you should just feel guilty. He's saying you should try to then be better, right? If you notice that I get distracted easily, then you say, okay, what can I do to improve my attention? If you notice that every time I attend the teaching, my first instinct is to kind of argue with the teacher, what can I do to turn that down a little bit without turning off my critical faculties? But how can I try to be more receptive, right? So it's not a matter of blame. It's a matter of recognizing, what am I doing that is getting in my own way? And what can I do to prevent that? And that is kind of good advice in general, right? We should look at anything we do, any worldly endeavor, any spiritual endeavor, and say, what am I doing that is getting in my own way? And what am I doing that is benefiting this practice? And all those things that are helpful, we should encourage them, we should rejoice in them, we should double down on them. All the things that are serving as obstacles, we should look at them and say, what is causing this obstacle? And how can I reduce it? Both in the immediate sense and in the long-term sense, right? So this isn't just for Dharma study. You can use this. This is something you should be doing for everything you do, in your work, in your study, in your relationships. What am I doing that is getting in my way? What am I doing that is making my life more beneficial in this area? So now we've talked about the qualities you should expect in a teacher, and the qualities you should expect in a student as someone who is relying upon a teacher. Next is how a student should rely upon a virtuous friend. So before we get there, are there any questions from what we've talked about so far? Okay. Feel free to ask questions at any time, as usual, both those who are here in person and online.
Venerable.
Yes.
So I don't know whether it's come later, but when we talk about guru devotion and guru yoga, so would it be? I was just thinking it'd be nice if you could do some. We could do some visualization on guru devotion. Is that because I've heard a lot from people, but I don't know whether it's a right time to kind of request for some.
So, in this text, he doesn't talk about guru yoga, right? He's only talking about the way to rely on a teacher. We can talk about guru yoga if we want. The guru yoga is a practice that combines our devotion to our teacher with our practice of the path in general. So the different types of guru yoga we do, essentially what we're doing, well, the most common guru yoga we do, there are two. One is Lama-Tsongkhapa guru yoga, which is usually reciting either the Miksema, not the Miksema, the Gandala Gema, so the prayer for Tsongkhapa, 100 deities of Tushita prayer, which is really a 7-limb prayer, or we do the Guru Puja. Those are the two types of guru devotion guru yoga that are most common. in kind of FPMT practice. But there are many, many types of Guru Yoga. But what you're doing when you do a Guru Yoga is you're visualizing your guru as a Buddha, and then allowing yourself to develop a relationship with that Buddha, right? And it's not, the important thing is that you're not superimposing the image of your guru and a Buddha together. You're realizing that the essence of your guru is that Buddha, right? So for instance, when we do Lama Chopa, the Guru Puja, the uncommon visualization for Guru Puja, we call it Lama Tupan Lobsan Dorje Chang. So Lama means your own guru. So when you visualize the Buddha in front of you and the whole merit field for the Guru Puja, first you are visualizing Lama Lobsan Tupan Dorje Chang. Lobsan stands for Lobsan Drakpa, that's Tsongkhapa. So the visualization is of Tsongkhapa. But Lama is your own guru. So it's your guru who has taken the aspect of Tsongkhapa. And then Lama Lobsan Tupon. Tupon is for Shakyamuni Buddha. So at Tsongkhapa's heart is Shakyamuni Buddha, who is inseparable from Tsongkhapa, who is inseparable from your own guru. And then Dorje Chang. So at Shakyamuni's heart is Vajradhara, who is the essence of all Tantric Buddhas, who is inseparable from Shakyamuni, who is inseparable from Tsongkhapa, who is inseparable from your own guru. So then when you do any practice, right, and we do talk a little bit in the next section about developing a merit field, when you do any practice of visualizing the Buddhas that you are making offerings to, you're making offerings to your guru who has taken the aspect of whatever Buddha you're visualizing, right? So whether it be Tsongkhapa or whether it be Chenrezig or whether it be any practice, Guru yoga means to join, right? The word yoga means to join something together. So Guru yoga is a practice where you're recognizing the innate Buddha qualities of your own teacher, and then you are conjoining them with whatever Buddha you are practicing. So once you begin Tantra practice, whenever you visualize any Tantra Buddha or any Buddha, you should recognize that that Buddha is your guru, taking a different form, right? So like right now in front of me, I have a tanka of Thousand Arm Chenrezig. That is Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who's taken the aspect of Thousand Arm Chenrezig, and so forth, right? So that's what it means to practice Guru Yoga. Now, sometimes, you actually will visualize that Buddha with your teacher's face. You can do sometimes. It's not always easy to do. If you ever go to Tushita, the FPMT center in Bodh Gaya, one of the gompas they have there, one of the meditation rooms, has a beautiful statue of Vajradhara, mother and father, at the front. It's called the Vajradhara Gompa. And his face is Lama Yeshe's face. So even though it's Vajradhara, the face very clearly is Lama Yeshe, right? So Kyabji Lama Zopa Rinpoche had that statue made specially for that. That's more difficult, right? So if you can't visualize the actual physical features of your guru, that's fine, because the physical features aren't as important as recognizing that your teacher is inseparable from the Buddhas. And so that's what it means to do Guru Yoga, right? So when you visualize the merit fields, who you're making offerings to, which we're going to talk about that in the next section, making offerings, you visualize your teacher and the Buddha as inseparable. So in the future, we can do some Guru Yoga practices together if we want. We can, I don't have any with me today, but we can do those.
Thank you so much, Brandon. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So then the next section is, how does the student rely on the teacher? So the student who embodies these certain qualities and the teacher who embodies certain qualities, what does it mean to actually rely on a teacher? So this has 2 points. Explaining the need to rely on someone with all these good characteristics, and then the actual manner of relying. Thus, someone endowed with the characteristics of a vessel, which is to say a student, should examine the way explained above whether or not a teacher has the characteristics. And if he does have them, he should obtain the kindness of Dharma from him. With regard to the manner of relying on a spiritual teacher, from whom in general you obtain the kindness of the Dharma, and who in particular guides your mind well by means of perfectly complete instructions, there are 2 points. Relying in thought and relying in action, right? So what is the manner of relying in thought? This has 5 points. According to, the first is training in faith. Or training in faith, rather, has 5 points. According to the Jules Blaise Durrani, it says, faith, a preparatory practice, gives birth like a mother to all good qualities. It guards them, and it makes them increase. This says that faith gives birth to positive qualities that have not yet arisen, and once they have come into existence, it sustains and it increases them. In the Sutra of the 10 Dharmas, it also says, that which leads to definite emergence, which is to say renunciation, or emergence from samsara, that which leads to definite emergence, faith, is the foremost of all vehicles. For that reason, the intelligent rely on the pursuit of faith. In those who are lacking faith, wholesome qualities do not arise. Likewise, in seeds that were burnt by fire, no green sprout can germinate. In terms of the forward and the reverse pervasions, faith is said to be the foundation of all positive qualities. So here, it is reminding us that we don't think blind faith is important, because blind faith doesn't give you any foundation, right? It's always going to be shaky. But faith itself is important. It's a conviction that is based on your observation, based on you investigating the guru, accepting them as a guru, recognizing they have more good qualities than you do, recognizing they understand the Dharma more than you do. Whether or not they have the 10 characteristics or not, at least they have more good qualities than you. Once you do that investigation, you realize and you accept that they are an appropriate teacher for you. Then you have faith in them. That faith comes from your own observation. It doesn't come from a blind faith only. But that faith is important, right? Because what that faith does is it helps make, we talked about all the teachings being personal advice. When you can rely on a teacher and you have faith that what they're saying is accurate, that kind of is a shortcut to taking their teachings as personal advice, right? It makes it so much easier when you have confidence right away that what they're saying is legitimate and is guiding you towards Buddhahood, even if you don't understand it right away, right? My teachers have taught me many things that at the time of them teaching, I didn't understand them, or I only understood them in a very surface level way. But I was confident based on my experience of these teachers and of having had them for teachers for as long as I have, that what they were saying was what I needed to hear. I just needed to understand it more and better. So then they gave me some advice or some practice instructions. Then I went and I practiced that thing and I meditated on it. And then slowly I came to realize the benefit of their advice. So we may not understand immediately what our teachers are telling us, both in terms of our intellectual understanding, but also the internal understanding. But once we've accepted someone as a guru, then we have to have faith in them. And that faith is going to then propel our practice. So here it's compared to faith is like the earth, right? That if you want to plant any seeds of realization, you need to have a suitable thing to plant it in, right? And I suppose we could say there are hydroponic plants if we want to be very 21st century about it. But whatever it is, we need to have a substratum. So all of our realizations, all of our understanding, all of our ability to actually practice the Dharma in a meaningful way, those are seeds, but they need to be planted in something. So faith is what serves as that basis within which all of our realizations will be planted. And then when they're appropriately watered and cared for, then they will grow into something more, right? So faith is required in that way. Without faith, our understanding is going to be dry. It's not going to be as nearly as robust, and it's going to take a lot more effort to get to that understanding. So faith is like a shortcut. And now it's not just faith in the guru. That is important. But we also have to have faith in the triple gem, and we have to have faith in karma and the law of karma and so forth. So we have to have faith in the teachings of the Buddha, as well as faith in our guru as someone who can expertly express those teachings to our needs, right? So there's a couple different things we have to have faith in. Faith that what the Buddha taught is correct, faith that our teachers understand those things, and faith that our teachers are able to explain them in a way that meets my needs. And if I don't have that, it's like burning all the seeds of my own understanding. I may plant the seeds, but I'm not doing the things I need to ripen them, to let them grow. The last line when it says, in terms of the forward... Yes.
May I ask a question about faith?
Yes, please.
How do you... Is faith also... Let's say there are some parts of, like stuff like rituals, let's say, or, certain practices which seem obscure and, so how would you go about, how does one go about developing faith? I mean, you might have faith in your teacher, you might have faith in the triple gem, but you still struggle, let's say, with some...
I understand, yeah. With a lot of the external practice and saying, how is this external practice benefiting, right?
Right.
So there are a couple different ways to go about it. It depends on the practice, right? But in general, first, once you've accepted someone as a teacher, then when they say that this, so the first thing to do is, so for instance, our teachers always say that whenever you are reciting prayers, you should have incense burning. It's good to have incense burning, right? Why is that? There are reasons for it, but I just accept that my teachers say that, and I have confidence that it's more than just cultural superstition. And so then I light incense, and then they give instruction as to why, and it has to do with things that I can't perceive, right? It's reasons that are outside of my ability to perceive. So then I say, well, I recognize that this is the tradition that's been passed down by teachers whose understanding is pristine, both teachers who have composed text and teachers who have taught me directly. And so I trust that based on my other experience with them, I'm going to follow in their footsteps and trust that what they're saying is based in the actual teachings of the Buddha and in the understanding of the world that is beyond my own understanding. And so even if I personally don't have a immediate reaction to whether or not incense is being burned when I recite prayers or not, I recognize there's a reason for it. And I can accept, based on my other observations of my teachers, that when they say this is the right thing to do, that I accept it as a thing to do. And then when I accept it in that way, slowly that ritual becomes part of a practice for me. And I notice that practice, by following in the footsteps of my teachers, opens up my mind to receive different levels of experience, right? So it's a matter sometimes of, once you've developed faith or conviction in a teacher based on observation, then everything they say, especially regarding ritual and external practices, you may not experience the benefit of them right away, but if you have confidence in your teacher, then you can do them anyway, and slowly you live the experience, and it builds up through your own personal experience, the benefit rather. So that's one way. You just go about doing it, So as I often say, like for me, reciting prayers is a very powerful practice. I came from a tradition before I found Buddhism where prayers seemed to be frivolous, right? Because usually I saw prayer as asking for something or begging for something. And so I saw it as even in the Buddhist tradition, a lot of prayers like, please give this to me, please do this for me. It felt like empty words only, right? So I didn't see a lot of benefit in prayers. But then as I learned to understand the power of prayer, is that the power of prayer is to readjust your mind. The power of prayer is to open yourself up and to stop being closed off. So we offer prayers not because we expect the Buddhists to give us things just because we ask for them. They would give us everything if they could. We have to open ourselves to receive their blessings. We have to stop letting our minds be closed down and to not accept the opportunities to practice Dharma that are available to us all the time, the opportunities to experience contentment and joy that are in our everyday life, right? That we're overlooking because we're focusing on our attachment. We're focusing on our worldly desire. What prayer does is it allows us to break that focus and allows us to be receptive to experience joy in any moment, to experience the blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and our teachers in any moment, to receive their wisdom and their insight and their guidance. So prayer in that way is revolutionary, right? If I expect the words of my prayer to be given to be like a wish only, then they're not transforming my mind. But when I realize that prayer can be transformative, not because I expect, it's not like a takeout order that I'm going to be putting in, but what it is transforming my mind, then prayer becomes an important practice. So for me, I had to go about trusting that my teachers say prayer is important, so I'm just going to do it. And then I did it, and then I did it, and I did it, and all of a sudden I said, oh wait, this is having an effect. This is doing something. So sometimes you just have to, the part of faith is saying, if my teacher advises this, I'm going to trust that it is an appropriate practice for me to do, and then I will go through with it, and then I'll keep observing my mind as I go about that practice. So it's the same for a lot of ritual as well. Why do we ring bells? Why do we hold the vajra? Why do we make certain mudras? All of our external ritual is done because our minds are so scattered and our minds have such a hard time grabbing onto the meaning that we use external practices to help tame our minds, right? I've told this story before of His Holiness doing a prayer service in Oberlinka that my friend was at, where all the ritual implements they gave to him, he just pushed them to the side because he didn't need them, right? Because he didn't need any of the external paraphernalia because his mind was is so realized. But for those of us, those external paraphernalia for most of us are providing like a crutch, right? So like when you injure yourself, you need crutches to help get yourself back into fighting shape, let's say, right? It's the same way with external ritual. External ritual is a crutch to help tame our mind. But if you don't have faith in that, the only way you can generate faith in it is by having confidence in your teachers based on your observation of them and trying to practice whatever ritual activities they advise, and then observing your mind after having practiced them, not just once, but a few times, over and over again. See, is it changing my mind? And maybe, not all rituals are going to benefit all people. If we look at Tantra, there are 4 different classes of Tantra, and the lower Tantra, so what we call Kriya Tantra and Charya Tantra, Action Tantra and Performance Tantra, have much more emphasis on external ritual and external practice. And then Yoga Tantra and Highest Yoga Tantra have much more emphasis on internal practice, not external practice, right? Because the external ritual is not as important when you're able to focus on more subtle internal practice. So there are 4 different types of Tantra to meet the needs of different types of students in the same way. So not every ritual practice is going to be beneficial for every single student. That's another thing to recognize. But you won't know that until you actually practice it and you actually exert effort into it. So I don't know if that's a very helpful answer, Madhvi, but hopefully it's pointing in the right direction.
Yes, Venerable. Thank you so much.
Venerable,
Yeah.
there is one line in terms of the forward and reverse pervations. What does that mean?
So this is talking about the foundation of all positive qualities is faith. And so forward pervation and reverse pervation, what that means is, if you want to develop good qualities, then you have to have faith. That's the forward pervasion, is what it's saying. And if you don't have faith, you won't be able to develop any good qualities. That's the reverse pervasion. Right. So that's getting on to the kind of the way we understand debate and the way we understand logic. If this, then that, but also if not this, then not that, in that way. So that's what it means in this regard.
Venerable, one more question, sorry.
Sure.
Sometimes in the modern world, we put logic and faith in 2 different extremes, right? But then we just spoke about intellectual ability and the ability to investigate the teacher and conceiving own understanding of the teaching. But also we also talk about faith in this context. So how do we understand this coexistence?
No, that's a good question. So that gets to the point where Buddhism isn't not advocating for blind faith. Right? And Buddhism isn't saying you should accept something just because the Buddha taught it or just because your teacher taught it. What Buddhism is saying, and the importance of faith, is here we're talking about faith in a guru after you've already accepted someone as a guru. So before you accept them as a guru is when you do this investigation. When you say, do they actually understand what they're talking about? Do they have these good qualities? So your faith isn't based on non-observation. Your faith is based on your own observation. So you observe this teacher, you see how they teach, you see how their students behave, you see how they carry themselves, how they live the Dharma, and based on that, then you develop conviction and faith that they actually know what they're talking about, especially when they start giving teachings about things that you don't understand. But in order to develop that faith, you have to first have this intelligence and this observation, right? So that's what it means when it goes hand in hand. If just because someone says really beautiful words, you immediately have faith in them and you say anything they say must be right, that's not appropriate. Right? And even the Buddha says, you shouldn't believe what I say just because you have respect for me. You should test everything I say. And then by testing it, you come to have confidence in the validity of it. And then once you experience someone, even if they're not your teacher, but they're someone that you accept as a spiritual instructor, if you've investigated a lot of what they said and you realize that what they're saying is valid and it makes sense to you and it is important to your life and it is in line with what other teachers say and in line with what the Buddha said, then when they start giving teachings on things that you may not have experience of, you at least have some conviction that they know what they're talking about, even if they're not your guru. So that still is an element of faith, right? But the more important thing here is first you start with logic, you start with intelligence, you start with investigation, and you start with observation. That leads to faith. You don't start with faith. You start with intelligence, right?
Thank you, Venerable.
Yeah. In the end, the teachings of the Buddha, on one hand, they're very simple and they're very clear. On the other hand, we've been suffering in samsara since beginningless time. And so it is hard to practice them all. And there are many aspects of them that can be complicated, have many different details and so forth. So we are going to be in positions as we practice where we need people who know more than us to point out what we're doing wrong, to point out things we haven't realized, to try to explain things in ways that'll meet our emotional needs, right? So if we don't have confidence that the people we seek out those answers from know more than us, and that then we're never going to put it into practice. So the importance of faith here is when I go to my teacher and I say, this is my problem, what should I do? For instance, for me, when I already had Lama Zopa Rinpoche as my teacher. Then when I finished, I was my last year of grad school, and I hadn't graduated yet, and it wasn't too late to apply into PhD programs if that's what I was interested in doing, but I knew I wasn't. And so I went to Lama Zopa Rinpoche and I said, I don't know what should I be doing when I finish grad school. I have my master's. I don't want to do a PhD right now. I want to study the Dharma in a more intense traditional way. And then he said, you become a monk, you go to Sarah and become a geshe. And as soon as he said it, I knew it was the right thing to do because I had confidence and faith in him because he'd been my teacher for so long, And at that point in my life, I had been in a relationship with someone for almost a decade, right? And I didn't have anyone in my family who was Buddhist. I didn't have anyone in my family who was ordained or a monastic. But because I had observed Lama Zopa Rinpoche for so many years and I had developed a relationship with him, that as soon as he gave that advice, I recognized it was the right advice, even if it was scary advice, even if it was terrifying. I knew that what he was doing was telling me exactly what I needed to hear in order to become a better practitioner, right? And so that faith didn't come from nowhere. It came from me building up that relationship, which is based on observation and logic and investigation, and then my own practice combined with them, right? So that's what we have to try to do, is we have to start with logic investigation that builds into faith. But if I didn't have that faith, that when he said that, I would have been like, is that right? Like, maybe that's not the best thing for me. Maybe I should go ask another teacher, see if someone else gives me different advice. I should shop around and try to find different things. And that wouldn't have helped me at all, right? Obviously the best thing I've ever done with my life is becoming a monk and moving to Sarah and studying at Sarah. But if I didn't have faith in Lama Zopa Rinpoche, when he gave me that advice, I wouldn't have ended up here, right? So I needed that faith was critical. That faith is what really pushed me into the life I have now. But that faith is not where I started. I had to start somewhere else. So it's the same with all of us, right? For some, that faith is easier than others. And for some, it takes a lot of effort. But either way, it should be based on observation and it should be based on experience. It shouldn't be based in blind hope like that. Okay. So then identification of faith. Tsongkhapa continues. Generally speaking, there are many types of faith. Faith in the three jewels, faith in karma and its effects, faith in the Four Noble Truths. However, here we're talking about faith in the spiritual master. Furthermore, as for the way to see the spiritual master, it says in the Tantra bestowing the initiation of Vajrapani, O Lord of Secrets, how should a student see his master? Just like he would see the Buddha Bhagawan. Similar statements can be found in the collections of the Mahayana Sutras and in the Vinaya. Their meaning is this: if you understand that someone is like a Buddha, instead of a mind conceiving faults in him, a mind thinking about his positive qualities will arise. Likewise, with regard to a spiritual master, you should purposely abandon any concept of faults in every respect while training in the mind that conceives of their positive qualities, right? So this is saying that when you, as we already discussed, when you accept someone as a teacher, as a guru, whether or not you see them as a Buddha or you see them as like a Buddha, whichever one of those two you have, you should only concentrate on their good qualities and you should abandon observing any faults in them. Not because it's not, the important thing to remember about relying on a teacher is that proper reliance on a guru doesn't benefit the guru in any way. None of it is about benefiting the teacher. It's about benefiting the student. So my proper reliance on a guru benefits me. It doesn't benefit them. I remember once I was in Boston and Geshe Tsogo was the teacher at the Dharma Center there. And there were two nuns that lived there. And I don't remember the context, but one of the nuns was kind of like joking. She said, "Oh, but Geshe Tsogo, you're a Buddha." And she was like laughing. And he looked at her and he goes, and he said, "That's for you. That's not for me. That belief doesn't help me at all. That belief helps you, right? That doesn't benefit me as a teacher at all." And so whenever we think of guru devotion or how to properly rely on a teacher, we have to recognize this is not to benefit the teacher. This is to benefit our minds. If we want to make the most of our opportunity to study and practice Dharma, this is how we do it, right? It is not about the teacher at all. So here, when we are only observing, we are making an exerted effort to not observe the faults of our teachers and instead only observe their good qualities, because that is what improves our mind and our ability to understand the Dharma and to grow in the Dharma, right? So we have to remember that. It's not to benefit the teacher, it's to benefit us. In addition, the above tantra also says, apprehend your master's positive qualities. Do not ever apprehend his faults. Apprehending his qualities, you will gain siddhis, or you will gain realizations. Apprehending his faults, they cannot be gained. You should act accordingly. Thus, if positive qualities predominate in a spiritual master, but you think about him in terms of the few faults he has, then this will become an obstacle to your own spiritual accomplishment. Even if faults predominate, if you train in faith from your own perspective of his positive qualities without thinking about him in terms of his faults, then this will become a cause for accomplishments to come about. Therefore, when it comes to your own spiritual master, whether his faults are great or small, contemplate the disadvantages of thinking about him from that perspective and repeatedly generate a mind abandoning this and put a stop to it. Okay? So again, we can look at it logically. Whereas if you look at someone and all you can think of is how many mistakes they make, then whenever they give a teaching, how are you going to have confidence in what they say? If you're so busy focusing on someone making mistakes and someone being or having faults, then it's going to make it very difficult for you to actually take their teaching and have it, penetrate your mind in any meaningful way, right? So we think of the disadvantages of seeing our teachers as having faults isn't because they deserve to be on a high throne. It's because if we only observe their faults, that's an obstacle to us gaining any level of understanding from their teaching. And so there's no point in having a teacher if all we do is look at them and see all of their mistakes. Now, if concepts of faults arise due to non-conscientiousness, a lot of afflictions, and so on, then you should apply yourself to confession and restraint. If you familiarize yourself with them in this manner, you will still see that there are few faults. But since your mind holds on to the side of positive qualities, it will not become an obstacle to your faith. For instance, the great elder, which is to say, Atisha, upheld the view of the Madhyamaka, while Serlingpa upheld the view of the true aspect Chittamatra, which is why, in terms of view, one was higher than the other. However, as he discovered the general stages of the Mahayana path and the mind of enlightenment by relying on him, he regarded Serlingpa as unequaled among his spiritual teachers. So Atisha studied, it says Atisha studied with 155 teachers. Of them, he studied bodhicitta from 3 teachers. And of those 3, 2 were in India, Maitri Yogi and Dhammarakshita, and 1 was in Sumatra, and that was Serlingpa, right? And Serlingpa was not Madhyamaka. He didn't practice or believe in Madhyamaka philosophy. He believed in the Chittamatra philosophy, specifically the true aspectarian Chittamatra, which is one of the subdivisions, right? Which is the most important part of that, is to say his understanding of selflessness was incorrect. Like the Chittamatra proposition of what it means to be selfless is not correct, right? It's not a correct understanding of the selflessness of persons or the selflessness of phenomena. However, his ability to understand bodhicitta and his practice of bodhicitta and his realizations of bodhicitta were so great that Atisha studied with him for 12 years, and he considers him his most important teacher. So even though Atisha, on one hand, said, I recognize that Serlingpa's, the way he expounds emptiness is incorrect. His philosophical view regarding emptiness or selflessness is not the correct way as taught by Nagarjuna. Even though I recognize that, I don't look at that. Instead, I look at the good quality of how realized he is in bodhicitta, and I allow that to be what puts him on my crown, right? That is how I see him as a teacher. So we can see that this is a benefit, right? So that's the example they give there. So then, once we have developed faith in the Guru, and we recognize the importance of that faith, and we cultivate that faith as a way not to celebrate the Guru, but as a way to improve our mind and our understanding, the next step of how to properly rely on a Guru in mind, in mental aspect, is to generate kindness, remember his kindness in order to generate respect for the Guru. So in addition to faith, we have to have respect, which go hand in hand, right? But here, Tsongkhapa is saying the way that the most direct way to generate respect is to remember the teacher's kindness. In the Sutra of the 10 Dharmas, it says, He looks for me who has roamed in cyclic existence for a long time. He awakens me from a long time of obscuration and torpor due to ignorance. He pulls me out as I sink in the ocean of existence. He shows good paths to me who has entered into bad ones. He frees me who has been bound in the prison of existence. He is a doctor to me who has long been tormented by illness. I should generate the notion of him as rain clouds, pacifying me who has been ablaze with the fire of attachment and the like. And the Array of Stocks Sutra says, These are my spiritual friends, expounders of Dharma, exhaustively teaching the qualities of all Dharmas, thoroughly teaching the conduct of bodhisattvas. With these thoughts in mind, I have come here. As they give birth to all that, they are like my mother. They give me the milk of virtue, so they are like nurses. They cleanse me completely by means of enlightenment's branches. These spiritual friends completely exorcise all harm. They are like doctors, releasing from death and old age, showering a rain of nectar. They are like Lord Indra. They are like the full moon, and they flourish with white qualities. They show the direction of peace, just like bright sunlight. Regarding friends and foes, they are like mountains. They have minds as undisturbed as the sea. They give perfect support, some say, like boatmen. And with this in mind, Sudana, I've come here. Bodhisattvas bring forth my understanding. The Buddha's children cause enlightenment. These beings, these friends of mine, are praised by the Buddha. With such virtuous thoughts, I, Sudana, have come here. As they save the world, they are like heroes. They have become the captains, protectors, and refuge. They are the I bestowing happiness on me. With thoughts like these, honor your spiritual friends. So these verses are highlighting different good qualities of our spiritual friends and why we should rely on them. So the Array of Stocks Sutra is Sudana is traveling to meet different spiritual friends. And throughout the course of that sutra, I think he meets 36 or something different spiritual friends, and he goes to a different one and he learns something and then he moves on to the next one, right? And so he lists all these good qualities that he experiences by meeting these different spiritual friends along the way. And some of the qualities that are listed here are very clear, right? But basically, it is that through the kindness of our gurus, we have access to the Dharma in ways that we wouldn't otherwise, They shower us with rain of nectar, which is to say that they expound the Dharma in a way that serves as sustenance to us, right? They're like a full moon in that they have all these positive qualities that are brilliant and make them shine. They are like the sunlight, which is to say they get rid of all of the darkness of doubt and ignorance, okay? Regarding friends and enemies, they are like mountains, which is to say they have great equanimity, that they don't judge others based on superimposition of either attachment or anger, right? So their minds are stable with regard to great equanimity. They don't distinguish friend or enemy. They give perfect support like boatmen, which is to say that they have no discrimination. They guide all sentient beings equally. In the same way that a boatman will bring everyone on their boat to the far shore together, they guide all of us without discrimination. So these are some of the qualities of our teachers that we need to keep in mind. And as we keep them in mind, Tsongkhapa says, we should recite these verses. You should remember these. You should set them to a tune, and you should recite them. But instead of the name Sudana, you should recite your own name, right? So whenever you are remembering good qualities of any teachers, you should do it in a way that's pleasing, right? So you set it to a tune because that is pleasing to your mind and it makes it easier to remember. And then instead of reciting the word, with this in mind, I, Sudana, have come here, you say, I, whoever I am, because this is how we should see all of our teachers, as all of these good qualities. That's how we develop respect for them, is by recognizing their good qualities and recognizing that they're kinder to us than the actual Buddha. So that's how we rely on a teacher through thought, right? By developing faith and developing respect. Those are the two aspects of properly relying on a teacher in thought that are taught in this section. And next is how do you properly rely on a teacher in your actions, right? So not just in your thought, but also in your actions. This itself has 3 points, beginning with the need for reliance through action. In the 50 verses on Guru devotion, it says, what need is there to say a lot of words here? Do everything to make your Guru happy. Give up anything that displeases him. Apply yourself to that and examine that. This was said by Vajradhara himself. Spiritual attainments follow the Guru. Aware of this, use anything there is and make your guru absolutely happy. In brief, try hard to please him and give up whatever he does not like. So this is very clear. Once you've accepted someone as a guru, you should commit yourself to bring delight to their mind. And as it will say in the next line, what are the best ways to delight your guru? The three means of pleasing the guru are offering him material things, serving him and paying him respect with body and speech, and practicing in accordance with his advice. In this regard, it says in the ornament of the Mahayana Sutras by Maitreya, through homage, offerings purely obtained in service, and practice, you should rely on a spiritual friend. So it's saying if you want to bring delight to your teacher's mind, you can make offerings to them, both actual offerings of substance, right? You offer them respect and you offer them service. So service, in this day and age, what we mean by service is if you come to the Dharma Center and you set up the Dharma Center and you help make the teachings available to everyone else, that's offering service, right? And even if you don't have me as a guru, I am here representing the Dharma on behalf of your own guru, right? That's one way to understand it. So anytime you attend a Dharma Center or attend a Dharma teaching, even if that teacher is not your guru, if you're working to help facilitate that teaching in a meaningful way, whether you're doing the online access, whether you're working on the website, whether you're doing any of these things, that's all on behalf of sharing the Dharma, which is on behalf of your own guru, right? So this is all way of offering service. So offering service doesn't just mean, washing your teacher's clothes and like massaging their feet. There are many ways to offer service and to offer respect, okay? And I don't know if it's this text. Yeah, it is in this text. Later it says you can offer him service by bathing him, anointing him, and massaging him. So, okay, there is that, but that's not the only way to offer service, right? Anything you do for the Dharma, if you do it, especially with in mind that I am fulfilling my teacher's wishes by helping facilitate Dharma study and practice, that is offering service to the guru. But of those, in addition to offering material things, in addition to offering veneration and praise and support, the most important one is you follow your teacher's advice. You practice what your teacher teaches, right? Practice in accordance with their advice. That is the best way to offer service to your guru in action. It's the most important thing you can do. If you want to make your teachers happy, if you want to bring delight to your teacher's mind, you follow their spiritual advice. You actually put into practice to the best of your ability the teachings of the Dharma as you understand them. That is the best way to please not just your gurus, but all the Buddhists, right? Is to actually work on your own mind, work on taming your mind, work on becoming a Buddha, work on benefiting others. That is how you bring delight to the minds of all the Buddhists. That's how you bring delight to the mind of your teacher. So this explanation of this has 3 points.
Venerable,
Yes.
what's the point in offering the guru costly things? I mean, he doesn't need them, right? I mean, costly watches and jewels and stuff like that. Why would you offer them? So that he can sell them and raise resources is, of course, one.
Well, first off, you don't have to offer him costly things. There are a few things. One, making offerings in general is the practice of generosity is important for your own mind, right? Regardless of the object. The guru being the ideal, the best object as an offering, but not the only one. So when you make a pricely offering, that helps eliminate your own mind of miserliness and so forth. But you also, I agree with you, you should be realistic. Like my teachers don't need a Rolex, right? So offering my teacher a Rolex is not beneficial to them. And it may be beneficial to me if I have the means to buy them a Rolex, but there are many other things I could do with that. A Rolex is so expensive. Many things I could do that would be more beneficial, right? Part of it is trying to show the respect in the way that is culturally appropriate to you. So while this is uncommon, to my mind, and while I agree, teachers don't need more things, in many cultures, making really exquisite offerings and pricey offerings is a sign of respect, right? And so in that regard, you are at least fulfilling these cultural obligations of what it means to show respect, which is why some teachers have like back rooms that are filled with all these random expensive things that they have no need for. Because the students are showing respect in that way and the teacher won't say no, right? The teacher won't reject that offering. For me, when I make an offering to a teacher, that's a thing I have thing I have to pay for, right? As opposed to my practice. I make sure that I'm getting the best quality I can that will meet the needs of whatever it is that I'm giving them, right? So if I'm offering food, then I get the nicest quality fruit or whatever it can be. Like my teacher at Sarah, I know, for instance, he doesn't like things that are too sweet. So I'm not going to get him chocolate. And he doesn't have a blood sugar problem, but he's getting old enough that it could be getting close to it, right? So I'm not going to get him something like chocolate because even though I love chocolate, that's not what he loves. But I will get beautiful papaya and mangoes and watermelon and other fruit like that. And I also know that what I offer him, he likes to then offer to other students. So, I will offer him chocolate because I know he gives to all the little schoolboys who love chocolate, right? So I'm trying to be skillful and I'm willing to spend money on things that I know are going to bring delight and he'll be able to use them. I'm not going to get something just because it's expensive and flashy if it's not beneficial. So I have to find that balance and saying, what can I afford without harming my own self that is not being stingy for the purpose of protecting my bank, but it's also going to be used. So you have to find that balance for yourself. And depending on your relationship to wealth and depending on what you see as useful, then your math may be different, right? Personally, I know whenever Captain Thomas Mauricio would fly, students would get him first class tickets, right? And now I don't know if anyone who's flown from India or Nepal to America, a first class ticket is absurdly expensive. I mean, a regular ticket is absurdly expensive these days. First class and business class are absurdly expensive, but it's so much more comfortable. And that, especially as he got older and his body needed more things, to give him any sort of physical comfort was something that students are willing to do, even if it was very expensive, right? So if you could do something that brings some physical comfort to your teacher, because your teacher is showing the aspect of having old age, of having bad knees, of having, some sort of sickness or illness, then that is beneficial if you have the means to do so, right? So I agree. You don't have to spend lots of money. Gurus don't need flashy things. They don't need the best cars. They don't need expensive watches. But you try to offer the best you can offer. And if for you that comes from this attitude of offering the nicest, shiniest thing, then that is the reason where that comes from, right? And teachers don't ever say no to an offering. They may then take that offering and offer it to another student. They may not keep it for themselves. They may sell it. They may do whatever. Usually they won't sell it. Usually they'll give it away. But how a teacher uses something and how a student offers it aren't always the same thing, right? Yeah, I don't know if I answered that 100%, Madhvi, hopefully.
Perfectly. You answered it
Yeah.
perfectly. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
It's a matter of, doing the best you can with what you see is useful. I know someone who loves watches, like literally loves watches. He has hundreds of them. I don't know if he has like really, really expensive ones, but he loves them. So since this is something he loves, I could see he's not a Buddhist, so this is conceptual. But I could see him saying, I want to spend $10,000 on this watch for my teacher because this is something that brings me joy. And like this watch, having a Rolex is something that is incredibly, I find a lot of benefit in. And therefore, making this offering to my teacher would be really meaningful to him because he has a connection to that. And for me, I'd be like, that's foolish and ridiculous. I think your love of watches is foolish and ridiculous, right? But from his side, that's something that matters to him. Now, whether or not that is important because it's focused on external things and blah, 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 and all these things, that's a secondary conversation. But if you're offering something that is meaningful to you, then that is showing this is something that I care about, and I'm offering the best of this thing I care about, I'm offering to my teacher, right? So there is also that aspect. So what I do my best to do is I don't know anyone else's mind. So I do my best not to judge when anyone makes any other offering to my teachers. I do my best to say, I'm going to offer the best thing that I can offer, that I think will be beneficial, that is within, that I can offer without causing harm to myself in any meaningful way, right? Without bankrupting myself the next year, without having to sacrifice eating so I can make this offering. That's what I'm able to do. I'm not going to look at someone else's offerings and say, oh, they're too stingy, or oh, they're offering the wrong kind of thing. I'm doing the best I can do, and I'll let everyone else do the best they can do because it's not my job to police anyone else, I remember I was at a Lama Chopa in Boston, and traditionally when you do a big puja like that, everyone should bring offerings, right? To be part of the offerings that are given out during a Guru Puja or any Tsok offering. And
there are different ideas of what you should bring. And so a lot of the Westerners have this idea that you should bring the nicest food you can get. So I'm not going to call out who this was, but they would always, get really beautiful, organic, like very hipstery, expensive food, right? But the Tibetans, when they came to these pujas, especially on holidays, they would want to give as many things as possible. So they would go to like the Costco and buy like, potato chips that come in like 100-count bags. So they can give 200 or 300 bags of potato chips, of these like personal sized potato chips. Because for them, they're like, A, I like eating those. They're delicious. And B, I can give hundreds of them at once, as opposed to your one little small offering. And I remember the Tibetans didn't care what everyone else gave. They're like, this is what I want to give. This makes me happy. But the Westerners are like, oh, how can they give that? It's so unhealthy, and they had all this judgment about someone else's offerings. You say, how is that benefiting you at all? Like they're offering what they think is a good thing to offer. And if it was really causing harm, the teacher would say, hey, maybe think about it differently. But your opinion about what they're offering doesn't actually benefit you or benefit them, right? So I try to look at offerings in that way, that I offer the best thing I can, that I think meets the needs of my teacher or of the Buddhas or of the community or whoever it is I'm offering it to. And I try not to judge others' offerings. Not always good at it, but I try. Okay, let's continue and see if we can finish this section today. I think we can. In the 50 verses on the Guru, it says, if with things rarely given, your wife and your children, and with your life, you should always rely on the master who gave you your commitments, needless to say, you should do so with your fickle possessions. And giving that amounts to always offering gifts to all the Buddhas. Offering that accumulates merit, which turns into the highest attainments. So here it is just saying, now again, 50 verses on the Guru devotion is specifically talking about relying on a tantric guru, but it's saying that you should be willing to give even those difficult things, such as your wife or your children or your life, right? And if you're willing to give those difficult things, then of course you should be willing to give fickle, easy things, your fickle possessions, right? Small things. What does it mean to give your life for a guru? The guru does not want you to take your life, obviously. But you look at someone like Venerable Roger, who dedicated his life to being the servant of Lama Zopa Rinpoche and his personal attendant. That's what it means to give your life to a guru, right? I don't know about giving your wife or your children. That's not so common these days. But you can understand that we shouldn't cling to any of our possessions and say that this is too good and too important for me to give to my teacher. And the reason for that is in the next verse they share, is that proper reliance on a teacher means that when you make an offering to your teacher, you're making offerings to all the Buddhas, because your teacher is the embodiment of all the Buddhas. Your teacher is inseparable from all Buddhas. And so you're not just giving to this one human being, you're making offerings to all the Buddhas, the representation of all three jewels of refuge at once embodied in your teacher. So that's why they're the most beneficial object of offering, whether you're offering material goods or you're offering practice, right? So giving to your teacher is like giving to all the Buddhas, and that is the best way to accumulate merit. And through that merit, you ripen all of your wisdom, all of your realization, all of your understanding. And so here it goes on to say how to serve and pay respect to your teacher. This can involve bathing him, anointing him, massaging him, wrapping him, cleaning him, nursing him when he is ill, and so forth, and talking about his positive qualities. So, if your teacher is especially, they talk about when Atisha was on his deathbed and Jom Tompa took care of him and served as his nursemaid, essentially, while he was on his deathbed, right? And the stories are like Atisha on his deathbed was like incontinent and was like a mess and was like falling apart, right? Because he was old. And never once did Jom Tompa have anything that would look like a complaint, but he selflessly served everything Atisha needed in those moments. He bathed him, he cleaned him, he fed him, he did everything he needed to do to make Atisha as comfortable as possible, right? And we do the same thing for our parents often, or for people that we care about, for our loved ones, for our family. So we should be willing to do the same thing for our teachers, right? So especially when our teachers need our physical assistance, we should be willing to help them if we're able to, and if we have the physical and emotional resources that allow us to, especially when they're sick and when they are in need of some sort. And then here, the last one, talking about his positive qualities. That's not to inflate his ego, right? But and you shouldn't necessarily talk about your teacher's qualities to your teacher. That's not helpful for them. But when you're in context with other Dharma siblings, then you can point out this teacher's good qualities, because that helps elevate your respect for them, and it helps share that respect with others in a meaningful way. But you have to be smart about it. Sometimes if you go on and on about how great someone is, then it can just turn the other person off. So you have to use your own intelligence, right? To say if this is an appropriate time to talk about these things. So that is how to make offerings to him. Make material offerings. And then the next one is how to serve. That's how to make material offerings and how to serve and respect him. Then lastly, how to practice in accordance with his advice. This consists in practicing without going against the instructions, this being the main means of pleasing the guru, right? The main means of pleasing the guru. In the Garland of Birth Stories, it says, the offering to be made in return for his help is to practice according to his instructions. So this is the main way to please your guru. And the benefit of this is that you can do this regardless of if you're in the presence of your guru, if your guru is traveling, if you aren't in the same country as your guru. This is the best kind of offering you can give, and you can do it all the time, 100% of the time. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you can be giving this gift to your guru of your own spiritual practice, following their advice, right? It doesn't cost you any money. It doesn't cost you anything except for your own Buddhahood, right? That's what it does. It costs you your effort toward Buddhahood. So by working on your own mind, that is how you benefit. And that's how you make the best kind of offering to your guru. So very quickly, let's go over the rest of the section quickly. I'd like to finish this today. And then I won't give too much explanation because we don't have a lot of time, but we'll have some time for questions, and then we can have questions next week if there are any difficult points. So we talked about what are the qualities of a proper guru, what are the qualities of a proper student, and then how to properly rely on a guru. And now the last part of this section is what are the benefits of actually relying on a guru in a proper way, and what are the disadvantages of not relying on a guru, right? So once we understand the importance of it, this is just giving us motivation. So if you don't have a guru in your life right now, this section is telling you these are the things to meditate on that will then encourage you to seek out a guru and to accept someone as a guru, realizing the benefits and the disadvantages of proper reliance and improper reliance, or the lack of reliance. It says in the scriptures, so first, the benefits of relying on a guru. It says in the scriptures that you will approach the state of a Buddha, that the victors will rejoice, that you will not be deprived of virtuous spiritual friends, that you will not fall to the lower realms, and that you will not easily succumb to bad karma and afflictions. Since you will not transgress the conduct of bodhisattvas and will remain mindful of it, your accumulation of positive qualities will grow higher and higher, and your temporary and ultimate goals will all be accomplished. So that is the benefits of approaching the state of Buddha. And then the other benefits are that your bad karma is exhausted, right? So you achieve good qualities and you eliminate bad karma. Furthermore, through serving and paying respect to the spiritual teacher, the karma for experiencing the lower realms is exhausted directly in this lifetime, through only slight harm to body and mind, or else through experiences and dreams. It is said that there are enormous benefits that outshine the roots of virtue of making offerings and the like to innumerable Buddhas. So here it's saying, even if you don't when we do purification practices, right, any negative karma we've created, if we can generate proper regret and do strong purification, then what we do is we eliminate the ability of that negative karma to ripen. What this is saying is, in addition to that, proper reliance on a guru means that what may have ripened as some incredibly difficult experience will instead ripen as a small experience, right? So it may be that you created the karma to be reborn in a hell realm, but because you have proper reliance on this guru, you may stub your toe, and that will be the fruition of that karma. And that's an example, right? I'm just kind of making that up, but you can see that the karmic action that you didn't purify, due to your reliance on a guru, it'll ripen in this lifetime, but it will ripen in a way that you have the ability to navigate it in a meaningful way, as opposed to it ripening in the future in a much more elaborate or difficult way, right? So it says small harms to body and mind. So in this life, you may experience difficulties, physical and emotional difficulties. that will be the ripening of past negative karma that if you hadn't been relying on a guru properly, it would have ripened in a much more egregious way. But due to your proper reliance on a guru, it has still ripened, but it has ripened in a way that you can navigate, that you can manage, right? That you can take into your practice and not be overwhelmed by. So your guru can't get away, can't expunge your negative karma, right? Because you've created it. You can purify it if you do that work, but otherwise you still have that negative karma. It's going to ripen. But proper reliance on a guru, what that does is that inherently eliminates or diminishes the capacity for that negative karma to ripen in the most egregious or profound or magnificent of ways. And it ripens in ways that you can actually deal with. The flip side of this too is when you have proper reliance on a guru, then if you know that you're doing your best to rely on a guru in the best way possible, and we're not perfect, but we're doing our best. If you have that confidence, then you can recognize that any negative thing you experience, any obstacle to mind or body, is ripening a negative karma that, due to the blessing of your proper reliance, is ripening it in a way that you can actually deal with it, as opposed to how it might have ripened otherwise, right? So it gives you a new context to understand all of the difficulties and obstacles you realize or experience in this life. But it also, at the same time, increases all your good qualities. So these are the two benefits. It increases your good qualities. It increases your capacity for wisdom, for realization. It moves you much faster and more quickly and directly towards Buddhahood. And it eliminates the strength of any negative karma you've created. So those are the benefits of relying. The drawbacks of not relying. If you make someone your spiritual teacher and then you back off in your reliance on them. So this isn't saying not accepting a spiritual teacher. This is saying once you've accepted someone, then you don't actually follow their advice or you don't rely on them, right? If you make someone your spiritual teacher and then you back off in your reliance on him, a lot of illness and negative forces will harm you in this life, and in future lives, you will have to experience the immeasurable sufferings of the lower realms. In the 50 verses on the Guru, it says, never agitate the mind of your masters, not at all. If you do so out of illusions, you will surely roast in hell. It was explained authentically that all those who disparage their masters will dwell in the horrific hells that were taught like the hell without respite. So here, this is just reminding us. This is very extraordinary language, but it's reminding us that since our teacher is the foundation of all of our good qualities and the foundation for our practice, that to not rely on a teacher or to disparage them or to speak ill of them or to go against their wishes is the greatest negative karma we can create, right? That is the power of having an object like a teacher in your life, is that they become the most powerful object for your good karma, but also to act in a way that intentionally displeases them. Then the negative karma is even greater than if it were against someone else, right? So whether or not you believe in the cosmology here, it's a saying that you're not, that they are such a powerful object in your life because they're the ones that are leading you to Buddhahood, that to then take their advice after having already generated a mind of respect and kindness and proper devotion to them, and to ignore their advice, or due to your afflictions to actually denigrate them, to say that they don't know what they're talking about, to speak poorly of them, that is the heaviest type of negative karma you can create. Now, what's important here is just to remember this is not punishment. Again, like your guru isn't punishing you for speaking badly of them, right? It's nothing to do with your guru's wishes or desires. Your guru wishes you to become a Buddha and to be free from all suffering, whether or not you listen to their advice or not, right? This is just saying that the karma in relation to your guru is stronger, both the virtuous karma and the non-virtuous karma. In a passage from the commentary on the difficult points of the black opponent of Yama, it also says, so this is from a tantra, it says, whoever hears a single verse but does not perceive him as a spiritual teacher 100 times will be born among dogs, and then as someone of low caste. So this is just saying that every single thing your teacher teaches is personal advice to you, right? And again, here, being born as someone among someone who is low caste is, again, not a judgment. It's a recognition. And this is more true then than it is now. But for those of you who live in India, this is still true now, that you know that where you're born, the circumstances you're born in, make your life easier or more difficult, right? It's not that one person has a more capacity to become Buddha than another person. It means what opportunities you have, right? Being born in an impoverished community means you have less opportunity, right? Because you have more immediate worldly needs than someone who has born with more economically advantaged family. So it's not a matter of judgment. It's a matter of recognizing physical and worldly obstacles. Similar, being born as a dog is a big obstacle to Dharma practice, let's say. So when you have accepted someone as a teacher, every single word they speak, you should be accepting it as personal instruction. Apart from that, the positive qualities that have not yet arisen will not arise, and those that have arisen will deteriorate and vanish, right? So not only will your negative karma increase greatly, but you won't achieve any of the things you want to achieve, and you'll go backwards. If you rely on non-virtuous spiritual friends and bad companions, your positive qualities will also diminish, your faults will increase, and there will be the undesirable results. Therefore, it is taught that this should also be avoided in every way. So this also makes very much sense, right? We should always be avoiding bad friends, so-called. And then lastly, the summary of all these points, and this is what we'll end on today. That being so, the instructions widely known as Guru Yoga should also be understood according to what has been explained before. However, it is not enough to do the visualization of just one meditation session. When you do one Dharma practice from the bottom of your heart, you should long rely on a spiritual teacher who guides you unmistakingly. So this is saying that this is not something you do just once. Every single Dharma practice you do, you should develop a mind of proper Guru devotion at the beginning of your practice. As Choe Khor said about that time, when you rely, so Choe Khor being one of the Kadampa Geshes in the 10th century in Tibet, when you rely on a guru, there will be doubtful questions whether to give up. I'll explain that in a minute. Accordingly, since there will only be loss without profit if you do not know how to rely on him, it becomes evident that the cycles of teaching about relying on a spiritual teacher are more important than any other ones and the root of perpetual striving. So here, that translation of Choe Khor's quote is very strange. Again, the Kadampa Geshes, they're Tibetan. It's very, very hard to interpret. It's one line. And the way I've seen other people interpret this is saying that when you rely on a teacher properly, you'll know what is the appropriate thing to abandon and the appropriate thing to adopt. So there'll be appropriate abandonments and doubts. So that means that all the things that are to be abandoned, you will know what they are, and all the things that are meant not to be believed, you will know what they are, right? That's what that means. But basically, it's just saying that your path towards Buddhahood will be clarified by proper reliance on a teacher. And so Kampa goes on to say, it is the most important of all the teachings because it is the foundation. And so then he ends this section by saying, with our coarse mental afflictions, not knowing how to rely or knowing how to but not doing so, we have often allowed many misdeeds of reliance on a spiritual teacher to occur in regard to listening to the Dharma, which is to say also studying the Dharma, right? Since it is difficult for an awareness of that to develop through confession and restraint, having understood the advantages and the disadvantages as explained earlier, you should sincerely confess any occurrences that are not in accordance with proper reliance and develop many strong resolves. If you act in that manner, before long, you will become like the Bodhisattva Sadaparadita and the youthful Sudana, who is insatiable in his quest for a spiritual teacher. So the Bodhisattva Sadaparadita, that's Bodhisattva always crying. Bodhisattva who has such great compassion that whenever he considers the suffering of sentient beings, it causes him to weep. And so it's saying that by relying on the teacher appropriately, your compassion will be magnified, right? Your practice will be magnified, and you'll be like Sudana, who was seeking out many, many spiritual teachers to guide him on the path to Buddhahood. So this is just reminding us that just simply saying, when we've talked about purification before, right? We need to know the 4 opponent powers. So if we want to purify negative deeds, it's not just enough to recognize you're doing something wrong. We have to develop a mind of reliance. This is, which is to say, a mind of relying upon the 3 jewels of refuge, as well as a mind of bodhicitta that is recognizing that it's either against the 3 jewels of refuge or against sentient beings who we have caused harm and engaged in negative karma. Then we have to develop a mind of genuine regret for the harmful action we've done or for the non-virtuous action we've done. And then we have to engage in some sort of remedial action and make a resolve or a vow not to continue that action in the future. So that mind of regret is really important in purifying negative karma, right? Just simply confessing a negative deed isn't useful if you don't have a mind that actually regrets it. So what Tsongkhapa is saying here is that we have erred in response, or in the way we rely on a teacher over and over again in this life, right? Because our minds are filled with ignorance and with all the afflictions. So if we properly study what it means to rely on a teacher, and we contemplate all the advantages of proper reliance and all the disadvantages of not relying properly, that will make our regret more robust and more complete. And therefore, any confession and any remedial practices we do will be more meaningful and have more impact. So that is what he's reminding us in this final section. So I'm going to end it there because we're already over time. If there's any really important questions, we can ask them now. But otherwise, we can save them till next week. Next week is going to be online. It'll be online only. It won't be hybrid, but there will be class next week. So if there's anything critical, you can ask now. No? Okay. Sorry for keeping us a little late today. I apologize, but I wanted to finish this section. So next week, we're going to start on the actual practice, right? And then how to begin a meditation session, all the aspects of a meditation session, and how that leads into us actually engaging in the meditative topics, beginning with perfect human rebirth. So let's just take a moment to generate a mind that recognizes that our study today has generated some merit, some good karma. And instead of wishing to keep that for ourselves, we generate a mind that wishes to dedicate that merit to other sentient beings, that we wish that merit may ripen on others, that they might be free from suffering. And we especially wish that it may ripen in our quick realization of Buddhahood, so that we ourselves may be able to free all sentient beings from suffering in a more effective and immediate way. And so with this, we'll recite the brief dedication prayers. If you have the gold prayer book, it is on page 36. We will recite these two verses once in English, then we'll repeat the second verse in Tibetan, and then we'll do the short, long life prayer for His Holiness Dalai Lama. So generate a strong mind of dedication. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel of bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow. May that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Yanshu Sam Chorim Poshe Ma Ke Panam Ke Gyurche Ke Wanyapa Me Payang Gone Gondu Pelwar Sho. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Chenrezig, Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. Great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate spending this time with you. And I hope you can continue your practices tomorrow, whether that's with us here at the center, in person or online, or your own practices, whatever they do. Really celebrate Sakadao Duchen as best you can and make the most you can of this incredibly beneficial holiday, right? Remember that it's celebrating the Buddha's birth, as well as his realization of enlightenment, as well as his showing the aspect of passing into Parinirvana. So it is celebrating his whole life, which we can incorporate into our practice tomorrow. So I encourage you to do everything you can to generate whatever virtue you can tomorrow. Okay, thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Venerable. Thank you, everyone.